Okay, I assigned you a couple of Barron questions last night about sampling, so I'm going to go over the answers a little bit. You notice I actually already did them. I filmed a previous video where I went through the answers and my thought process, and unfortunately, the video got deleted or I didn't record the whole thing. So, typically I go through my thought process, but the answers are here, and I'll share them with you so you guys get an idea of where they came from. All right, so the first in this first question, you're looking at you want a sample of 25 students out of 500, and the surveyor decides to pick every 20th student waiting in line to go to an assembly. And it says, explain why this procedure will not result in a simple random sample of the students present that day. So here's the approach I took. The thing is, if you're asking every 20th student, and I'll show you the illustration I made in the previous video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right. So we're asking every 20th person. What that's telling you is that the first 19 who are walking in have no chance of being selected. They have no chance of being a part of the survey. They have no chance of being a part of any possible group in this survey. Because as I said, if it's out of 500, that means you're going to be ultimately picking, let's see, it says every 20th. So you're going to have 25 kids. So that's not a good thing, because for a simple random sample, you want every individual, as well as every possible group, to have the same chance of being selected. That's what makes it a simple random sample. Now, ultimately, why we want that? Now, let's take a look at the characteristics. Maybe every class size is 20, and they said they're having an assembly and they're taking every 20th person. Maybe the last person walking in maybe they have a characteristic that doesn't represent the rest of the students or the class. Maybe it's like the class leader who they have stand behind to make sure everyone stays in line or something like that. Or maybe it's someone who just, they don't want to be a part of the school assembly. Maybe they don't have a lot of school spirit or something, and they're just kind of lagging to go in. So those are things you want to take into consideration. That 20th person might not be representative of your entire population. That's why it's important to make sure that you want to give everyone the same probability of being selected, or every possible group the same probability of being selected. Now for part B, it says to describe a procedure that will result in a simple random sample of the students present that day. I'm going to go over a few essential details you need for a question like this, especially if it comes up on the AP exam. You notice that the first thing I mentioned was I'm going to assign each student a number based on their last name alphabetically. Always specify how you're going to assign the numbers, or based on what. A lot of times people said, I'm going to give every kid a number between 1 and 500. And I actually forgot that detail. I'm going to put between 1 and 500. Now, why do you have to put that? Because you want to include these details to show you actually know how to go about doing one of these. That's what you're trying to prove here. If you're saying I'm going to give every kid a number, there's no rhyme or reason behind it, you're not really explaining the process. So you want to basically give the impression that, hey, if I were doing this is exactly what I would do. So I put assign a student a number based on their last name alphabetically. And then I'm going to use an RNG, that's a random number generator. I'm going to use that to select 25 non-repeating numbers. That's important. You want to specify this. Because if you put, I'm just going to select 25 numbers, then there's a possibility that you get a number more than once. You can even get the same number 25 times in a row. And what are you going to do? Go back to the same person 25 times? If you get a person that comes up 3 times, you're going to ask them 3 times. So you want to specify that you want the numbers to not be repeating. Or I've seen people in the past put, if I get a number that repeats, I will select another number. So, and then the detail I added was, you can put ask corresponding students, or you can put ask the students whose numbers come up. You don't want to just say you're going to randomly select 25 numbers. You want to specify what's going to come after that. So in this case, I put that I'm going to ask the students whose numbers come up, or students whose numbers correspond. These might seem like small details, but you want to give the impression that you know how to design one of these, you know how to implement it, and you know the important stuff. You'll notice that ultimately, I only wrote 2 sentences here for part B. I wrote, let's see, how many for part A? I wrote 2 sentences. You want to keep your answers pretty concise. You don't want to write like half a page, or you don't want to go crazy answering a question like this. Because you want to remember, on the AP exam, you're limited in the amount of time you have. You don't want to spend an excessive amount of time explaining something like this when you might have to do it to do some calculations or run a hypothesis test down the road. You want to make sure you're leaving yourself enough time. So these are some strategies you want to approach when answering a question like this. And also, these are the answers you'd want for a question like this, with the